him. I'm like, where is your PayPal?
All right. Well, welcome to Skeptic Alert. I am Capacitance, and I'm here just to sort of hang out, make sure everybody's, keeps talking because Henry likes to shut up sometimes and be silent. Except for right now, where Henry's going to say hello to everyone. Hello, Henry Sweets.
Hello. I have a dick that's this big.
And the ladies apparently love it. Also with us, special guest, Hagbard Celine. How you doing, Hagbard?
I'm doing pretty well. I would like to say, though, however, because of the name of the podcast, I'm skeptical of your dick claim. I will admit I have skepticism for that.
Alert, his dick is not that big.
Well, I mean, so when I do it like this, it looks different on the screen. On the screen, it's more like this. So it depends on what you're skeptical of, you know?
You have a good point. There's a scale issue here we're having.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We need a banana for scale.
Yep.
I find a bit lighter works better.
All right. What are you guys going to start talking about this evening? What's the opening topic for the evening?
Well, I don't know, Capacitor. You tell me.
I should tell you. I think that we should give the opportunity to the guest, just because Hagbard is a very interesting person. I don't know if you've watched all of his stuff like I have. Sorry, Hagbard, I was stalking your YouTube channel. But yeah, I find you to be a very interesting person. You can tell that you've had some lived experience. And my question, I guess, to start with is, when you look back upon your experience, how do you feel about it?
Mixed feelings, if I'm being honest. I'm not even going to lie, more than likely, I'm one of the freak cases that prison made me a better person. I was a bit of a shit before prison, and it did me some good to be forced to live in an environment I otherwise would have avoided with all of my being. But overall, I mean, the regrets do not outweigh the amount of fun I've had, that's for sure. I've done some shit, man. I've got stories that I'm still waiting for the statute of limitations to go out on so I can tell them on the channel.
Nice. And I think we've all lived that sort of way. I mean, I'm not sure about you, Henry. I think I feel like I know less about you because of just less stuff that I've watched of yours. But I think we all, at least, I don't know how old you guys are. I think Hagbard and I are similar in age, just guessing by experience levels and stuff. But there's at least people of my generation. I feel like we're all lucky that we survived to some extent.
Yeah, I feel like we're the next 70s generation where you always hear from all these old hippies where it's like, yeah, I did all that. It's like, yeah, but now you don't do anything anymore. We're all pretty much done.
Yeah, that's a good question.
You burn out.
We know what the hippies did, you know. So what's some of the shit that your generation's done, you know? Because I'm 18. I was born in 98.
Oh, you're a baby. Holy shit.
I will say that I am early 40s.
Oh, well, I'm not even that old. I'm 28.
Right.
Oh shit, you're my age. I lied.
Yeah, I'm not. Everyone thinks I'm older than I am because of my voice, which, by the way, hasn't changed since high school. So if you can imagine that I've always sounded like this and always sounded like an old fucking man. But my
I feel
generation,
in the same boat.
Yeah, my generation, as strange as it is, we used to throw a bunch of fucking rave parties. That was kind of our equivalent of Woodstocks, is going to EDM concerts, especially in Florida, where, god damn, it's a port state, man. That's what I've always warned people. You'd think that like these areas are nice and quiet, and nope, there are more drugs rolling through Florida than you could ever possibly imagine.
We did similar things, a little bit different. And that was sort of at the tail end where we had these gigantic raves out in the desert because I live in a huge desert in the United
Sounds
States.
nice.
So that you go out into the desert and you find 1,000 people out there listening to music way too loud, doing way too many drugs, and
Yep.
well too far away from any type of emergency response.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's like we were doing it in cities, and we'd just like take this guy's whole house and strip the entire downstairs, and that would become it. We'd put fences up on the upstairs bedrooms so people couldn't get up. We didn't want them in our shit. That's where like the private zone, like downstairs, everyone's drinking and smoking weed and everyone's on ecstasy. You go upstairs, that's where people are doing cocaine and fucking using needle drugs and shit. It's a whole fucked up scene, man. I don't advise raising your child in an urban area. That's all I'm saying. I mean, really, that's even suburban with close enough ties to urban areas is just as bad. All you've done is given them the money to go out and fuck around. At least the urban kids don't have the cash. Most of them can't just go out and, blow $40 in the weekend. Your kid can, and he will, and it won't be on good stuff.
That's the thing. Don't give your kids money.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm down. Make them work for it. I'll tell you that. Make them work for it. They spend it differently.
I used to take my lunch money and save that shit up and get drugs every week.
Yep. Don't make school lunches $5 or $7 a day either. That's a bit much, man. That leads to some serious high school weekends, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. Quick question. So you're 28. You were probably born in like what, 89?
Yeah, 88.
88. You were born in 88. I was born in 89. I'm 28. I'm kind of curious. We're talking about this scene and all the shit that was going on. I'm kind of curious if the same drug scenes hit you at the same times they hit me. For me, the first thing that hit was ecstasy. That would be, I don't know, 2005, maybe 2006. You were in Florida. I'm in Washington. I don't know if you were in Florida at the time. But then Oxycontin hit. Did you ever have a huge Oxycontin epidemic?
We were the kings. No, this is another fun tale that I can tell because there's nothing illegal about it because it was an industry. Are you familiar with the term pill mill?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there were probably 27 operating in mid and southern Florida for the longest time. They were actively run by people that were pretty openly parts of northeastern mafiosi cliques. Pretty openly. Guys with names like Vinny that drove Maseratis. Guy never had a doctor's degree, just the money man, shows up, fronts the whole business. All of a sudden, this doctor who looks drugged himself is sitting behind a desk punching papers. So yeah, we had all that, but it was so fucking crazy. We used to know, I know the prices. I know a guy in Tennessee that was buying 30 milligram pills for $30 a piece. We were selling those for $5 where I was. We were just giving them away. They weren't any money. But the problem is because it's a port city, the opiate cycle hits so many people I knew. Where what you'd do is you'd start out, you'd be like, okay, on the weekends, these guys like to party and they go out and they'll like do some Oxycontin. Okay, that's whatever. Well, now it's like an almost daily thing, and then they move on to doing it in a different manner, and then they end up doing more, and then they move into a harder substance like fucking Dilaudid or one of the other step-ups from Oxy. And then eventually, fentanyl. But then the next step is they end up doing heroin. That is the inevitable conclusion of starting your opiate cycle. Everyone should, when you get pain medication from a doctor that's going to treat chronic pain, they make you sign a piece of paper that says you're an addict now. You will be an addict. And you have to sign a waiver that says, I can probably handle it. You literally have to sign a waiver, a medical waiver that says, I got this. For real, I'm good. Because you're not supposed to be given that kind of treatment until you're dying, and it doesn't matter. But these places were giving it to people who had twisted ankles. As long as you could produce an MRI with a broken bone or something, they were passing you fucking hundreds of pills. And those places were a nightmare, man. They had armed guards. It looked like something out of Requiem for a Dream. Honestly, it looked like something out of Requiem for a Dream. You know the scene where they've got the fucking guy with the suitcase he opens in the back of the truck, and everyone starts scrambling? Yep, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much that. Every week, and 9 o'clock on Fridays. That's what it looked like there. Fucking
Opioid dependency is a huge thing these days. That's a gigantic market. And down the street from my office, they just put in this methadone clinic, and the whole neighborhood went to shit. But it is amazing how many people these days are on opioids.
Well, and here's a little secret. all you're doing by going into methadone treatment or Suboxone treatment is paying the government for your drugs.
Oh yeah.
Suboxone and methadone. I mean, methadone, if you're familiar with how and why it was manufactured, methadone is a synthetic replacement for opiates invented in World War II because the Germans could no longer get a hold of enough opiate to make any of the products needed for war. So they made methadone. Methadone does the same goddamn thing. It gets you high. It has an up and down cycle. If you stop it, you'll get withdrawal. Everything about it is the exact same. The only thing is that they dose it to you and you pay the government for it.
There's one difference though. I've been on buprenorphine, naloxone, Suboxone for like 6 years. There's one difference between it and say heroin, and that is the fact that it lasts 12 or more hours, which is why I don't mind it, because it keeps you from withdrawal for a long time.
Yeah, and that's all it is. All it is a primer keeping you from withdrawal. It doesn't actually solve any of the problems. It doesn't solve the underlying psychological conditions that made you want to use this amount of drugs. It doesn't solve any of it. So I'm not satisfied with that being the answer. Not to mention what Capacitor said, where whenever they stuff one of these fucking places in, the whole neighborhood goes to shit. It's like putting a government-owned crack den in the middle of downtown. Like, it's just a crack house now. It's fine. It's government-sanctioned crack house. But, you know, it's a crack house, and it's still going to attract all the crackheads and their crackhead behavior. So be prepared for all that. I'm saying lock your fucking doors now and keep your shit inside, because it's going to go missing.
It is a nightmare.
Money. That's what it's about. Like, it's the government. You're paying the government. Yeah, but also the doctors. They're getting paid and shit. I'm pretty sure my doctor's a fucking pill pusher. Yeah. And I'm okay with that, because I like drugs, but, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with me is it's like the character that I'm based on is from a novel called the Illuminatus Trilogy. And he also has another one called Schrodinger's Cat that has the same character, yada, yada, yada. But his whole basis is he intentionally sells heroin to the United States. That's his bit. And he goes, they could put me out of business tomorrow. I don't care. I'm just in it for the money. Someone's going to sell it. It may as well be me. I make sure it's good quality stuff that isn't going to kill anybody. Everyone knows what's going on. My distributors tell the patient, yada, yada, yada. But suffice it to say, I'd be out of business tomorrow if they just started selling heroin from their own stills. If they started selling their own shit and legalized it, I'd be out of business. I'd be done. There'd be no cartels. They'd fall apart. Everyone's like, yeah, but then they just become legitimate. Okay, and that's like if in the 1930s they'd been like, well, we're going to end prohibition. Okay, we're done. We need to end it. There's too much violence surrounding it. It's too much money we're losing. It's not worth it. We need to end prohibition. And someone was like, yeah, but then Jack Daniel's company will just start selling it legally, and these were evil bootleggers. They need to stop. This is how you stop it, stupid. You make them go into business, you register them, and then you can watch them. How do you not understand that the way you're doing it now is just leading to more and more people getting fucking Colombian neckties? It's not a good way for this to be handled.
See, the drugs of my generation were, you know, everybody was, at least when I was younger, it was cocaine and then eventually, you know, speed or meth, what it eventually became. And, you know, and the thing is that, you know, I smoked a lot of pot when I was younger. But I never got into the other ones. I think I tried cocaine once, and I was like, "Meh, what the fuck is this?" And then I saw my friends going down the meth path, and I was like, "Oh fuck, all of that." Yeah. And now I'm at this point where like I'm allergic to pot now. I tried smoking it, and it like nearly killed me. And so it's like, I'm like, oh man, no, I guess I'll just I'll stick to nothing. And up until last year when I decided I needed a drinking habit.
Yep, been there.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you. The other thing is that marijuana has gotten insanely more powerful since the 1970s and 80s. Man, we're talking of an upgrade from 5% to in the 20s, and I have a strain right now that's 28.6% THC.
Yeah, I'd probably die.
That's hash. In your generation, that would sell as a low-grade hash. 40% THC was a low-grade hash. So, I mean, shit, man. Like, yeah, the pot nowadays is a whole different game. There's no joke about that. But, and I mean, I don't. Here's the other thing. It's not like I advocate people using hard drugs. I don't. As someone that had my own experiences with them, I honestly don't advise you go down that path. Especially not in today's environment, where mostly what you're dealing with is the scum of the fucking earth.
And I tried acid once.
Oh, well, acid's fine. Acid's all right.
I
Same
got
with
my ass
mushroom.
kicked by 4 dudes while on acid.
That
Oh,
sounds like my brother has a friend of his that went to a party and took a couple hits of acid and ended up trying to like grab the host's girlfriend's ass and a couple of other really really out there things. But this was like a group of guys that like did BMX biking and fucking football players, and these were big dudes. And this was like a musician who had just taken acid. He just started getting wailed on. Just
So
my
I'll tell
brother and I grabbed him by the back of his shirt and dragging him down like a quarter-mile long lane because these guys lived on like private property, and he's like dragging him, and they're like trying to beat his ass still.
one of these days I'll have to tell that story. But how do you guys feel about legalization and what are your stances on it, of all
I
things?
I think I made myself clear on that.
yeah, I think it's very good. And I agree exactly with Hagbard. I also think that a lot of the people that say you legalize every drug, I think a lot of the people that do drugs that are addicts are going to be doing it regardless. They're going to be buying it legally or they're going to be buying it illegally. And
Yeah.
like we were talking about, even with Suboxone and methadone, there's tons of people right now that are addicts that are just they're still addicts. They're just getting their drugs legally. If right now, if my prescription ended and I went into hardcore physical opiate withdrawal, you bet your fucking ass I'm going to be out there fucking trying to get some drugs so I can function. You know, there's also drugs too. THC has some medicinal benefits. I also have done some research on psilocybin having medicinal benefits. There's some drugs that are illegal that I don't think should be illegal strictly for their medicinal benefits, let alone all the
Yeah.
other stuff with the bad drugs.
Well, I mean, if you're looking into it, if you're looking into stuff like the real fucked up stuff like meth use, which it sounds like you've got a little bit of unfortunate side note of, but it I don't buy the argument that you constantly hear that if all of these things were legalized, people would just go out and start doing these drugs. I don't know many people that even are regular drug users that are like, you know what, meth. That's what we need. We need some meth tonight. I mean, we were gonna get some like beers with the bros and fucking maybe do a little cocaine and no, meth night. It's totally a meth night. What do you say, guys? Toss in for some meth? Unlikely. That is a highly unlikely scenario to occur. You're
I was
much
going
you're
down the
much more
aisle.
likely.
I was going
Yeah,
down the aisle looking for potato chips, and you know what? I ran across some meth and decided to do that instead.
it's highly unlikely. I mean, we'd be better off going back to even. I've said we were better off in the 1950s and early 60s when you could do like Canada. You can go into the pharmacy and just get T3s,
Yeah.
and that's not a problem. Or back in the day when you could get low doses of just standard amphetamine. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem becomes when you get cyclical about it, which would be more easy for people to note if every time you go into the store and you're buying amphetamine, people would be able to tell. Whereas nowadays, you've got, I mean, I know my little cousin was on Adderall. And when you get generic Adderall that doesn't actually say Adderall on the side, it says what the Adderall is made of, what the main component is. And it just says amphetamine sulfate on the side. That is a drug from the 1950s. That's the same shit we used to give our soldiers in World War II so that they could stay awake and fight longer.
Or you could buy them at the drugstore for truck stop or for truck drivers
Yeah,
back then.
yeah. Well, that was ephedrine. If you're thinking of that, ephedrine is actually a naturally occurring substance that does almost the same thing. You can't buy here anymore. It's completely against the law. Along with ephedra, which was a plant derivative from China that actually mimicked amphetamine even better than the alternatives. Ephedra was a godsend for anyone who wanted to get their homework done. I'll tell you that. That's one of the ways that it was so easy for me to be a good student is ephedra, but it's all gone now. So,
Interesting.
but yeah, I don't see the
That's-
problem with it. I don't see the argument that it's going to get worse than it already is. I don't think that the inner city agrees with you. Is
Well,
what I'm
I'll tell
saying.
you right now. Like I told you, I live in a giant desert,
Mm.
and I literally can see Mexico, right? As far as it's not very far away, and you feel the influence of, let's say, cartels and drug runners and mules and coyotes and all of all these animal names that mean bad people in Mexican. And I meant
Yeah.
to say Mexican, not Spanish.
Yeah.
So there's I think that there's a benefit, cost benefit there as to dealing with the very real border problem that
Yeah,
is at least very evident when you live near it.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's something that I don't think a lot of America understands when it comes to this discussion, because it's similar in Florida when it comes to specifically Haitian gangs, which is what my main problem in Florida was a lot of the Haitian gangs were fucking off the chain.
Right. I don't know
Uh,
anything about Haitian gangs. And, I pay attention to immigration stuff just because where I'm at, and I still know nothing of that world.
yeah, there's something called the Zopound, and it's not pleasant. These are guys that like one of the most famous cases was in Miami. A guy stopped at a red light, and he was just doing the thing where you have your hand kind of hanging out the car. This guy rode up on a scooter, grabbed the guy's arm, and lopped his forearm off with a machete, and just drove away with the whole arm because the guy had a nice diamond-studded watch on. That's how these gangs operate. They are utterly insane third world country gangsters, just like the Mexican cartels. They're third world country gangsters that have scared the politicians in their own countries into submission. We need to be concerned about that. We need to be concerned about La M and Mexican gangs that have control over their own governments at this point. They're capable of scaring local providence governments away from policing the regions to the point where the people themselves are taking up arms to defend themselves.
Well, that's
And
where you
that's
have
not good.
people, as an example, in El Paso, where you have dissenters that are hung from billboard signs on the U.S. side by the
Yeah,
Mexican cartels.
yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and people don't understand. Like I've joked, that is our own little ISIS down there that we're just ignoring. And I've been watching them for 10 years and looking into their structures and the way that their gangs are formed and some of the politics of their gang leaders dying because that has happened several times in the past 10 years and they've had to restructure. Um, it's it's like Game of Thrones down there. It's utter madness, and the idea that that isn't going to leak over our borders is a joke
Well,
because it already does.
but I like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Is there a lot of incest?
Like, yeah,
Yes.
it's nice to watch. It's really not good to be a part of.
Yeah, that's
'Cause, yeah,
another uncomfortable conversation to have about influences of that culture. But
there's a lot of at least in the cartel culture, there's a lot of ransoming happening. And
Mhm.
as an example, in Phoenix, there is I forget the number. It's a large number, like 30 or so per year, where people will just kick in the door and ransom off a random family, and
Well, that's
it is pretty crazy.
yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, it sounds like fun.
Yeah, but you see, that's the kind of thing that, like I said, between the cartels and the places that we have, like Chicago and Miami and some of these worse inner city areas, even Orlando. I think Orlando in 2010 or something like that made number one for murder capital per capita of the United States of America because of
Right.
what's going on in these regions. And it is predominantly, this is the problem with the war on drugs, is it doesn't actually solve the problem, it escalates it. And it's done nothing but escalate it for the last 60 years.
Right, and you could put them out of business by legalizing.
Yeah.
It,
And that's all you would have ever had to do is just start, okay, fine, if this is what you guys want, here you go. And then watch these places just shrivel up or have to leave and find, I mean, my biggest argument about the inner cities specifically is if they could get enough resources together to leave the cities would be their best option. These people need something of a back to the earth movement, if you will, where they go back to buying land. What we've done is created an unintentional inner city, essentially renting class. This is a class of people who have not and probably will never own property, which is the basis of wealth. That is the beginning point of being able to hand your children something after you die. That's
I've
not
often
good.
Yeah, I've often felt that one of the things that they could do to help people out is sort of force the idea that, you know what, you need to go see other parts of the world, other parts of the country at the very least, and go see
Yeah.
what it's like to go live somewhere like in a rural environment. just for a little while, just to check out what the rest of the world sees.
Yeah.
And I think it can help people's worldview, because I know people that live in Chicago that have never seen outside of Chicago,
Yeah.
and
Most
don't
people
even know what
live in
it's
a
like.
Yeah, most people that live in a city like that have never left that city. It's the same with New Yorkers. It's the same with people from Miami. They don't leave.
It makes them stupid.
Yeah, it's like wearing blinders your whole life. It's kind of like why there's a running gag about why black people don't like going camping. Black people
I
don't
don't know.
camp.
I don't know this running gag.
Yeah, that's a white people thing. Black people don't camp. They just don't. Predominantly, they don't. That's
Huh.
the running joke there because so many people. How many people from the inner city do you know would go camping?
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
it's just not. It involves leaving and not being at work or available for work or relaxing, sitting somewhere and doing nothing, which, if you're really lower income, is not an option you take very much. Campsites aren't free, so that tends to be another detractor. Camping equipment isn't free, so there's a whole litany of reasons why these things happen. But the not the
So
not the
now,
least of which is it's cultural. Not the least of which is that it's just not something most black families I grew up around even talk about. We were out going camping all the time. The black kids I grew up with, they would laugh. Why would you want to go be homeless for a week? I don't understand.
so today I learned that camping is racist. All right, I got it.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. You can find articles about that if you want to have fun. There are probably articles in HuffPo and fucking what is it, Everyday Feminism about how camping is racially segregated or racist. Or I don't see
We need
why
more
not.
representation.
Need more representation in camping.
All right. I guess let's take this to, like, both of your guys' channels tend to focus on the absurd. And what is the most absurd thing that you've seen recently?
Recently?
Sure,
Oh
or
man,
whatever time frame you like, you go for it. This is
my
your
favorite
moment.
my favorite crazy thing ever, and what I feel is either the root of or the encyclopedia madness origin is David Icke.
All right, give me some context here.
Okay, if you don't know who David Icke is a British man who, over the course of I think 25 years, has written dozens of books. I read his encyclopedia. Literally, it's like called the Encyclopedia of something or another, and it's 1,200 pages of madness, utter
Like
madness.
Alpha, is it the Alpha Draconians? Is that what the?
It
Is
could
that
be.
David?
It
Okay,
could be
sorry.
that. Like it's huge. It's got a green cover with a bunch of swirls, artwork from that one artist he always uses, that one madman he always uses for his art. Um, Basically, he believes that humanity was either seeded or influenced by a species of alien reptiles as dictated by an African tribe, the Dungay or some shit. And he goes to this a 2 hour expedition with this African tribesman leader who talks about the lizard people that came down to Earth and described all these different things. And basically, it comes to they control the universe. They control our world specifically. We're slaves to them. The moon is actually a hollow, and it's used to project holograms down to Earth to influence humanity. We're ruled by a class known as the Illuminati, who are human reptile hybrids that are also shapeshifters. They make up the Bank of England, the Rothschilds, the Holy, or the royal family of England, specifically the Queen. The Queen has been cited by several people transforming from her human form to her lizard form with a sacred dagger, which was used to penetrate the vagina of a child to gut it from that point during satanic sadosexual rituals. David Icke is the king of madness. If you've heard any conspiracy theory, and I mean any conspiracy theory, he's got his fucking finger in it somewhere. He's involved in some way, shape, or form. If he didn't originate the idea, he amalgamated it into his already existent theorem. He is the king of crazies.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, and if
So
you haven't heard, please, if you get a chance and you like crazy shit, check out David Icke. He's one of the roots of this madness.
So how does that translate in, at least in your channel content? Because like I said, I've watched I think all of it from the previous channel that you've killed to the new ones. Um, how does that translate to being properly woke, which you seem to focus on a lot these days?
That's because it to me is the only people so far that can give me new. I've heard all this other stuff. I've heard every theory you can possibly think of for 9/11, up to and including service teams going in to refit the tower for broadband internet just weeks beforehand, actually having been CIA agents planting thermite. I've heard it all. You can't come to me with a normal conspiracy theory that gets my attention anymore most of the time because I've been doing this since I was a child. This is what I've always been into. I was reading the what is it, the Project Blue book?
Oh yeah.
Like when it was declassified, I started reading it. Like I was into that shit. That's what I've always been into is crazy conspiracy theory shit. And I always knew about the Nation of Islam, but because I was a child and I was never looking into this stuff deeply, I just assumed it was Islam. I just assumed it was like it was just another. Here we go. It's another religion. I'll look into that later. I wasn't concerned with that. What actually got me onto this was finding out about the Hebrew Israelites. That's where I was like, wait a second, hold up. One of the first things I saw about that was a Hebrew Israelite arguing with the Nation of Islam. It's one of my first videos. And boy, this is like watching two people in an insane asylum argue whether they are Jesus or Napoleon. You're both wrong, but it's fun to watch. I mean, and that's what started it. They believe things other people don't. The slave ship's never real. That is to me mind-boggling. That there are so many people on this planet that can be like, hey, show me a slave ship though. Show me one. If they was out there, show me a slave ship though. Like, do you think we kept them? Do you think they didn't end up as like bars in most of the east coast of the United States? Because that's usually what happened with old ships. They'd be ripped apart and the wood was requisitioned for other things. Or they dry rotted in dry storage. We didn't keep old wooden boats, you crazy bitch. But these are the people that as my running joke has been, these people can vote. These people have children that they teach this shit. I mean, these are real human beings that are walking around with us that believe these things. And if you're stunned,
remarkably sad.
Yeah. And if you're stunned like I am that there are people walking around believing in fairy tales at all, I mean, even ones that are instilled in socially acceptable fairy tales. And you're like, really? You're okay with that? You're just going to run with it? All right, fine. I'm tired of arguing with you guys. I've been doing that since I was a child, and I'm bored with arguing with most religious people at this point. But you think that African American or black people on the planet were put here by sunlight, willfully the universe condensing it into black women who used her exogenetic ability to create the first black man, thus creating humanity. I need to hear more of this. I need to hear a lot more of this because I have collected all the other crazies and now I'm finally here.
So that leads me to you focused a little bit on somebody that I ended up having to subscribe to, and I regret it every day, but I still watch The Elder, which you had put in your one of your videos. And I think that it's so weird to me that people can live with this level of ignorance that is, and the thing is you're right, they're teaching their children, and then they're wondering, they're blaming society at large, or more accurately, white people for the downfall of society, at least their inner city societies. And I'm curious how much of that can really be attributed to not only the bigotry of low expectations on the behalf of white people, but also the low, if existent at all, standards for success. When you can tell that there's a certain amount of you shouldn't even try to succeed because the white man's going to hold you down, and you're taught that from such an early age. It's just like how does this community survive when they're being taught not to?
Yeah, and I've tried to emphasize this several times in my videos about this subject. My problem with these people, it's a chuckle. Don't get me wrong, I laugh. But my problem with these people is they are hurting their own community every time their message gets out. And we saw stuff like at Evergreen University. I don't know if either one of you have kept up on those videos.
I've been watching those.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so have you seen the one where the older gentleman is behind the podium and he's trying to address a whole room full of people? Well, at some point, someone from a college classroom, I'm assuming this is a student at that school, someone who is supposedly college educated, goes full we was. I mean, just full we was. Like, literally, we created everything, we built everything, and we taught you to bathe when you coming out them caves. And she's talking to, like, the college president. She's supposedly a college student, and she's wee-wuzzing in public. And yeah, a lot of that is obviously to do with the fact that if you look at them and go, you know you're very wrong, right? The defense immediately is racism. It's if you criticize, and this is, if you criticize the Nation of Islam, you will get people coming to your shit, as I have had, saying, look, all right, look, I feel you. The Nation of Islam's kind of fucked up. They might teach some bad stuff. I get you, but it's, and yeah, they teach racist things. They teach that, you know, white people are subhuman and they're designed to be subjugated, and the next time that the flip of the universe occurs and the slaves are decided or whatever. But they help some boys out, and after they join the Nation of Islam, they stop like beating their wives and doing drugs, and they get off the streets, and that's great. But let me explain something to you. That's the same thing the white nationalists say. And a lot of white nationalists are reformed drug addicts, reformed burnouts that finally got their shit together. Now they dress nice. They're working 40 hours a week because you've instilled them with this ideal. Now, does that make that a good thing to have done? Just because
in the long run, it's proving to be
good.
not.
Yeah, just because some of the results are good, are we supposed to just be like, well, I guess that's what we're doing?
Yeah, you could make the same argument for the KKK. You could make the same argument for any number of really weird ass groups. I mean, you can make the same argument for Islam, even.
Yes, absolutely. No, and they do. People do make that argument to me all the time. Like, well, before Islam, you know, I was a this and that, and I was unhappy, and I was unfulfilled. And I'm like, okay, so you joined a cult. It's not a new story. That's a tale as old as time, dumbass. Do you know how many people join a cult because they feel empty and meaningless and like they're not doing anything of importance and all these other problems that, you know, existential problems that humans have once they realize their place in the universe? It's not new.
Well, I watch a lot of channels as far as, you know, the group. I watch a bunch of the antis, as they would so hate to be called, a bunch of the SJW channels, and I try to find through lines for everything. I try to look at everyone and say, all right, what's the real message here, and why are you promoting it? And if I had to very much oversimplify, it very much seems like the channels such as yourself, both of you, and a few others of the antis, it seems to be that there is this push for, in a very sarcastic way, how come you guys aren't taking responsibility for yourselves? And what, and the you guys being whatever group that happens to be, whether it be feminists, whether it be you know, race baiters, whether it be anything. How come there's not personal responsibility at play here? And if I had to oversimplify the other side, it would be, how come nobody's given me my respect?
Yes. Yeah, that's a fair assessment, I'd say. I think it's born, in my personal case, from those experiences. Like you said, are they good or bad? I take them as good, because mostly what it's done is make me sit down and go, it might be you, dude. Like, it really might not be that. I mean, I empathize with these people because I grew up thinking in a very similar manner, that society's fucked up. Things aren't perfect. There are all these, you know, injustices in the world. I mean, my first, I don't know if you heard this because you said you've watched my stuff, but my first arrest ever was for spray painting my high school with anti-Bush war slogans. I was a left-leaning, semi-radical political activist, if you will. And I now look back on that. That might be one of the only things I'm ashamed of.
So what changed? What was the moment for you that made it click for you that that's not the road that you wanted to go down?
That's hard to say. Really, like I said, it was the realization that, okay, it was partly curiosity and partly a predestined, almost like martyrdom complex for me to need to go to prison.
So
you know what I mean?
Help. in some way.
Yeah, my friend and I had committed a federal felony when we did that. You cannot break into federally owned buildings and damage them. And we did, like, quite badly. I'm not even, this isn't, I'm now I went back to that high school. And I'm not legally allowed on that campus, but I went back to that high school. And it still bears the marks of what I did to this day. And that was an upper middle class high school. That was a well-funded school that was full of high-end students. And I deeply regret having damaged that campus. It's a regret for the taxpayer. It's a regret for the other students that missed out on classes while the campus was being cleaned. It's the realization that your actions, if motivated only by yourself, have so many more damaging consequences on the world around you than I think most people tend to believe. I think we live in a time where it's highly encouraged to be self-centered while simultaneously appearing to be empathetic to the world around you. Because if you talk to any of these activists and you get to the core of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and why I think identity politics bothers me the most of all these subjects, it's 100% egoistic and selfish under the guise of the greater good. You'll rarely find someone that is in this for selfless reasons. And if they are, they tend to be the stupidest person in the room. And I'm not even trying to be mean.
And there's a lot of people that believe that they're doing it for altruism. But I think that they're confusing guilt.
They're not. They'll even say exactly, like, if you ask them, why are you doing this? Why is this so important to you? And they're like, well, this is an issue that directly affects me and people like me. That's not an unusual thing to hear nowadays. That's crazy. That is not a healthy method of assessing reality.
Do you think it started with activists like that were genuine? Like, let's say, I don't know, Martin Luther King or some shit. They started as genuine activists, and then people saw the admiration that they got, and they decided, I want to do that too. And instead of coming from, the place of really wanting to do whatever it is, it became more of a selfish, egotistical, narcissistic type thing.
Oh, never underestimate the power of guilt.
Yeah, that's another thing that plays heavily into this. And as we were discussing the whole, how do you think this stuff spread within the African American specifically community, because it is pretty specific. I've done a lot of research, and you'll find the occasional like UK Afrocentric or African Afrocentric. Those are occurring more and more, especially in South Africa now. But it's really a combination in America of a lack of education and low expectations. You can't say anything. I grew up with an aunt that used to basically call me Cave Beast. I didn't even get it. I didn't understand I didn't get it. You know what I mean? No one in the entire room got it. And eventually we did figure out what she was saying, and she was some weird voodoo practitioner. This is a problem that can never be addressed as long as it's a protected class. As long as being a black person makes it so that criticizing you gives you the defense of you're just being racist, as long as that functions and it's not called out like it was for a while. I have a very clear memory of the late 90s and the early 2000s where it was a joke for the black man in a movie or a TV show to say unnecessarily, oh, it's because I'm racist, and everyone in the entire show or movie would be like, dude, come on. It was clear that
airplane.
It's clear that the joke in that scenario was that no one's being racist, and this person's trying to manipulate the fact that they're black into getting what they want. That was clearly understood to be the joke.
Well,
you can't do that now. You could not make that joke on TV today.
Oh no, most of the comedies wouldn't fly, but I think that there's there's a commonality here between Islam and feminism and in the racist circles, the Afrocentric circles, that they're weaponizing weakness, right? Where they're taking the sensitivities, the sensibilities that white people have, and using that against them, as that the West has, and saying, well, you can't talk about this because it is off limits, because it hurts us.
Yes.
And it's counterproductive to any type of resolution. It's
It
definitely
really,
counterproductive to equality.
yeah, it really is. And to me, more than anything, that has been a resounding proof that there's no interest in equality in most of these activists.
Yeah,
Most
there's
of
no end game.
them, no, there is no, there never has been. I used documentary footage to make a video, and it was a documentary released in like 2008 about the radical feminists in the UK. Um, they regret, the vast majority of them regret a lot of their decisions that they made when they finally, if you will, came to and realized that they were either being insane, or I don't think many of them put it in as many words, but eventually you have to realize all you were doing was grabbing for power. You have to know. You have to eventually look at yourself and see, especially if you fail, because then you can no longer afford to delude yourself. But if you've got to know that a lot of this is just purely a power play.
So how
There's
many
nothing.
kids do you think these days have absolutely no idea that there's a difference between equality and revenge?
Most of them. The problem, okay, it's the affirmative action issue, if you will, writ large. Um, is affirmative action a good thing or a bad thing? And once it was instilled, how long should it have or should it continue to run? How long is it applicable? You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of policy that I see that tells me straight out, you don't have a plan. You're trying to. I understand that affirmative action was probably put in place for a good reason. That being said, it has led to nothing but suspicion and distrust and a lack of belief in the existence of meritocracy in certain units. And this isn't new. This isn't something that people are just coming to. It's just been, if you say out loud, ever, I don't think that, hiring at a chemical processing plant should be done using racial categories. I think that this should just be a job that whoever can best mix these chemicals does it. That's a racist stance now. Just saying that out loud makes you, in the eyes of many people, a bigot.
Yeah, well,
And
believing in equal rights for all is one of those things, and equal opportunity is definitely a racist thing these days.
yeah, and the irony is in this situation that is probably what stunned me the most when I first started interacting with this issue is the lack of the perception on the part of the person making the accusation that accusing me of being a bigot for saying meritocracy was better means you think black people can't do it. That's what you're telling me. By looking me in the eyes and saying without affirmative action he couldn't get in, you're saying he's not as good as the white person.
That's funny.
So
Is
you're
even
just
if you tell them that, they don't even hear those words.
no, they really don't. They turn it around on you immediately and go, "Oh, so you think black people can't perform? You're the one that came to this assumption, ma'am. I don't know why all of a sudden I'm the bad guy."
Motherfuckers.
I don't understand how people are like that, and they don't get it. They just don't see that there is a bigotry of low expectations in these areas, and there is a poor me aspect that you're encouraging that isn't helping these communities. It's making them worse.
I'm with you on that. I'm definitely, I mean, I was raised in such a way that, I mean, first of all, I grew up in a very rural environment. I grew up on a farm, and
Nice.
everyone was very poor. And like I had to walk to my neighbor's, my friend's house, and it was like 4 miles away or something. And and so I was raised in such a way that there was a couple of black families that were within a 10-mile radius. And but I was always raised in such a way that it, very much no different than eye color or hair color, right? It was just like some people are like that, it's
Yeah.
and I never thought anything of it until I moved to Hawaii. And then I was the victim of the racism. I was the one where they definitely don't like whitey down there.
Oh no.
And then I ended up moving to where I am now, where there are considerably more brown people than white people. And it's one of these things where you kind of feel it, but it's at the same time it's like I'm not going to fall victim to that. I am not a victim. I'm not going to play that way. I've never accepted anything less than success on my own merit. And it just bothers me when people are like, well, you have to be nice because they can't do it on their own. I'm like, you motherfucker, that's racist.
Yeah, that would be like again. It's and I'll tell you, I'd just shrugged off any racism from Hawaiians because they're all kahuna eating motherfuckers that like spam, so they're not even really human if you think about it. They think spam is food. I mean, let's be serious.
Yeah, it's a major ingredient on all the menus is spam. Yes.
Yeah, I'm saying if you think spam is like that's the bee's knees, you got a gutter palate. So I mean, I'm from Europe. We're the land of the French, and no, you gotta class that shit up. Is what I'm saying. I'm saying make a sauce, make a goddamn sauce. Is what I'm saying.
That's awesome. All right, Henry, chime in here. What's your next question?
I
Okay,
like
then.
spam. That's not a question. I think spam's all right sometimes. My
I have a gutter palate. That's allowed.
I do have a gutter palate. I smoke and drink a lot, so I don't know if I have much of a palate. But my friend's mom, I'd never eaten it before, and my friend's mom one night just cooked this shit. She like made rice, and I was homeless at the time, staying at my friend's house, and she made this rice and spam and cooked it up, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" He's like, "It's spam," and I'm like, "I'd never had it before." I ate it. I ate more of it. Then I ate even more. I was like, it was crispy. She like did it in the pan so that it was kind of crispy.
Yeah,
Wasn't bad.
So speaking of homelessness, that's another one of those character builders that's out there. And much like you, Hagbard, where you had a curiosity of something that was probably not, that could have been very bad for you. I had something similar where it started out where I jumped on a train and hoboed to New York. And the first time I ended up deep in Mexico, and that was fun trying to get back when I was 15 years old. But the larger experiment of that was I bought one of those $700, hey, let's go take a tour of Europe in 10 days. And the first day I was there, I got off the bus and decided I was going to live as an undocumented immigrant in Europe. And I did for 2.5 years.
How was
And
that?
oh, that was interesting. I mean, I had a little bit of money when I went there, so that made things a little bit easier. But for the most part, I was just picking up odd jobs to, I had to learn languages and I had to learn how to fit in and pick up odd jobs just to be able to afford to eat. And you learn a lot about the world when you are forced to look at it as though it's not, the world doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
And I think that I've gained a respect for culture. And it's one of those things where I think that there's a certain truth to that there is no American culture, with the exception of it is the culture of America. But comparatively speaking, it is cultureless. And I think that there are people that have no easier way to fit in than to be cultureless, and yet
Yeah.
they still refuse to do it. They want to bring their shit country with them,
Yeah.
and they should stop that.
Yeah, well, as I've joked with people, there is an American culture, but Americans are loath to admit what it is. And it's essentially American culture is a culture of war. And we have to acknowledge that. I think as Americans, we do need to acknowledge the fact that we are a war culture. It's what we excel at. And there's fundamentally nothing wrong with that. We're a frontier nation. We're a frontier culture. That's what we are.
There's
And
certainly not enough warrior class in a lot of the people these days, at least the noisy wheels.
no, there's not. But as I've joked, I live around these people. I did in Florida. I did when I was in Wyoming, and I do here. There's plenty of the. You live in the country. There's plenty of good old boys out there. I was joking. We were watching something. Are you familiar with a YouTube channel called Joe Goes?
I am not, sorry.
Okay, well, it's a semi-small, somewhat. I hate to say it because I like him so much, but even he said it. He's talking about closing because he's just not making any money. But he just goes around the country and eventually the world and just interviews people in Germany and all these different festivals around the world. Well, he went to a mud convention in Tennessee, I think, or Kentucky, and
Good old boys.
yeah, it's exactly what you'd imagine. And all I could think watching this is, yeah, I mean, laugh all you want, but these are the guys that are going to be in tanks the next time some shit goes down. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at some guys that are blowing off steam in a dangerous way, not particularly afraid of injury or death, and just in it for the thrill. That's who signs up. Those are the guys right there.
they're
guys out in the
definitely
mud.
not concerned that somebody has offended their identity.
Nope. It's never even crossed their mind. And Joe's there and they know. It's like everyone knows that if you come to a place like this as an outsider, it seems weird and it's goofy and people are kind of going to make fun. They accept that. I don't give a shit. We're here to drink in mud. If you don't like it, don't do it. If you think it's silly, laugh and I'll continue to drink in mud. I don't give a shit. That is to me something that needs to be instilled in all people. As strange as it sounds, is you can't have someone who like if you're offended at stereotypes as a person of color, but you're perfectly willing to stereotype rednecks, that's all. I mean, that's
Well,
all I need to say.
when you talk about the U.S. being a warrior culture, a culture of war, you can look at really these key moments where people say, "Well, look at this time in history. Look at the Great Depression era. Look at the mid '50s, right?" And these are all times that are either just before or just after war, and
Yes.
you notice that there is a character that is built out of the suffrage of American citizens. As an example, when you had rationing or when you had famine, you had a a character that was instilled into people and passed down for generations. And I think that there's a very, very we lack in some real way understanding what it means to struggle. And that we have it
Yes.
so easy that we can complain about 57 genders and we can complain about all of
Correct.
these things which are meaningless under the whenever you have to put yourself into the shoes of someone who has suffered or worked for something.
Yeah, I mean, if you go look at my Twitter account or if you spend any amount of time with me, one of my regular kind of joke phrases is, man, we need a good war. Like one of those good rationing wars, one where victory gardens come back. We need that as a
I keep
culture.
saying that we need famine
Yeah,
2020.
we need a real good war, like one of those that like everyone gets behind because they know for sure that this enemy's bad, and there's none of this Vietnam syndrome shit where we're questioning what we're doing, and we've got people going, "Oh, but come on, the Vietnamese guy, he's a good guy. Let him take the country. It's fine." We need it. We need
Do you
one
think
without
people are even
that.
capable of that now, though? Because of, I
Yeah,
mean, like right
yeah,
now, you've got this.
but it would require a trickle down of issues to occur. Um,
Right, because you're looking at something like Islam, which is a huge problem worldwide,
yeah,
in my opinion. And I will just preface that with it's my opinion that that's a gigantic problem that we're all going to have to face at some point. And right now, you have gay people clinging to Islam, and you have like the far left clinging to the farthest of far rights.
I
And
know.
how does that even happen?
I wish I had any explanation at all for that aside from mental illness. At this point, people have divided into very bizarre party lines that don't actually make any internal sense. You know what I mean? It's not internally consistent. It's just whatever it is that, and this is what gets me the most, and why I no longer associate myself with most of my left leaning friends. Um, they don't seem to realize that since Occupy, and this is I was a part of that. Since Occupy, you have become used. You are the useful idiots. Ever since you actually started to threaten people during the Occupy movement, it's not hard to understand how it's come to be that you guys are now the party of simultaneously saying that you want socialized medicine and universal income and you want open borders. You can't have both. And I'm not
No,
even saying you can't as in a paternal way. You just can't have both.
right. Take an economics class and tell me how that works out.
But that's what they just this is the feels good moment. It feels good to say you want a universal income and you want everyone to have healthcare. Yeah, of course, that's great. Who would say no to that? It feels good to say that this rich country should take in all these people. But when you combine those two, you end up with a bankrupt welfare state.
Well, I mean, luckily we get a preview of this with Europe. I mean,
Yes.
we're gonna see that happen, and I think that it's definitely not going to be a matter of Merkel changing her mind or any of the other European leaders going, you know what, maybe this isn't such a good idea. I think what you're going to end up seeing is a violent revolt of the citizenry.
I hope not, but with the incident that occurred today, I'm beginning to get weary and think that my worst case scenario that I've been telling people about is coming true. So I'd like to think that it's not going to occur, but on the other hand, as I've been saying, you're talking about something that falls into a category I'd call inevitable.
I'd have to agree with you on that.
Just like the rise of the alt-right, where people are like, what do you think of that? I think it's an inevitable reaction to what's been going on. I don't agree with a lot of their positions, but I think that you kind of pushed them there. So what can I say? Maybe stop.
There's definitely a lack, I think. There's a myopic type of look at the world, where everybody looks at the world through their very specific set of issues. And there seems to be no forethought into, well, how does this affect other people? And what is the, as you say, inevitable result of this type of behavior?
Yeah.
And it's sad to me, because I really want to see the good in people. I want to see harmony. I want to see, I've always lived my life by the motto, it's nice to be nice. But sometimes you just got to call some motherfucker out and tell him to shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always a really nice guy, as strange as that sounds, but man, it's gotten to the point where I'm just like, you don't even you don't actually care about any of the things you're talking about. You care about, at this point, you care about winning, or you care about being, as they say, on the right side of history, which to me is one of the most dangerous phrases to have ever propagated around political discussions. I mean,
Yeah,
truly,
nobody's first of all, nobody knows the future, and then secondly,
right.
yeah, it is definitely a selfish point of view to be like, I am dictating what is the right side of history in this moment when I'm talking to you.
Yeah, like I don't understand. I guess I've lost the ability to be that kind of overconfident. I don't.
I never had it.
I've joked. I am really good, and I admit this because I think the next step is the dangerous one. I am really, really good at saying, I don't think you're doing that right. I'm really good at that. I'm not going to be the one to tell you what to do. I think that's one of the major problems with humanity is a bunch of motherfuckers running around telling a bunch of other motherfuckers they for sure know better than they do. I don't think that
Right.
functions super well. I don't think it ever has, and I don't think it's going to start suddenly functioning now. It's never really worked that way.
So far, my way of doing it is asking them, "Are you sure that this is going to work out the way you think it will?"
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when it comes to people who like, I've talked to a lot of people with all kinds of bizarre ideologies, and I'm an anarcho-capitalist or all these other different principles, and anarcho-primitivists are at least being honest. I'll give them that. They will straight up tell you, nope, we're here to tear down civilization and never rebuild anything ever again. That is the goal, because civilization is the problem. At least they're being honest. They know what their end goal is, and they know what's up, and they accept the repercussions. If you talk to most anarcho-primitivists, they're like, it's sad, but yeah, a lot of people are going to have to die. Oh, okay. But that's become my mantra. If you think you have the solution, tell me what it is. And once you've laid that out, how many people approximately have to die to make your dream come true? Because that's where this ends. You must understand that almost every one of these ideologies, the end result is a lot of people got to die. Whoever I've dictated is the problem, or whoever I've dictated doesn't get help. Someone has to die. So
that's the one thing that a lot of people are definitely trying to stop, right? In the name of keeping people from dying, they're putting systems into motion, which will inevitably lead to the death of the loss of life.
yeah. Yeah, and
That's
it's
fucking
the
depressing.
same as what's happening in Europe. And like I said, we're starting to see reactions to that. And again, it's not a support or anything. It's just, yeah, pretty much. It's that's the inevitable end result of not listening to your populace. Is your populace revolts? This is standard political theory. This isn't new.
Well, there's a lot of very uneducated people out there.
Yeah, well, a lot of people that I've noticed that even beyond education, a proper understanding of human nature is vital. And a
That's my
lot of
problem with
people,
all of the anarchos, by the way, is that none of the anarcho systems seem to account for human nature. That's
Yeah.
really my biggest problem with it. It's just like you think that that's how it's going to work. You think that even with the primitivists, you think that people didn't create civilization as a result of primitiveness. I mean, it was a way to escape that. It's going to be created again.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing that's we've joked with an anarcho-primitivist that basically what you'd have to do is create the primitivist police that goes around and stops progress and stops new technology from being made. You'd
Brown
actually
shirts
have
at the club.
Yeah, you would actually have to do that. That would be the only way to ensure that things continue down the path that you're proposing. It's the same with most anyone who puts anarcho before their name. Just sit them down and make them understand that anarcho is where all this started. That's literally like what you're saying is I'm going to hit the reset button and rebuild society in most of the time, whatever the second half of this term is. So you're either an anarcho-communist, an anarcho-capitalist, an anarcho-primitivist, or any of the other forms of anarcho-crazies. But basically, it's they most of them haven't actually studied anarchist theory first and foremost, so they don't actually understand that most people who espouse an anarcho philosophy do indeed accept and understand that the first step in any of these situations is the destruction of any existing states. That's what the fucking name means.
Yep.
And they don't
I don't
seem to
think they
realize.
realize how much they rely on that too.
No,
They rely.
no, of course not. God, no, of course not. I mean, just sewage. A joke. Just sewage alone, man. If all the sewage workers in the United States of America took one day off, just
It'd be the
one
Oregon
day.
Trail, man. Everyone dies of dysentery.
Yeah, pretty much. There'd be cholera. There'd be all kinds of outbreaks within 24, 48 hours. No problem. I mean, people's toilets would back up, and the entire city's sewage would come out of the person's toilet who's lowest in the system. Because there are constantly workers who are changing these things called lift gates that change the water pressure around the city.
Yeah.
Lifting stations is what they're called, and it's where you lift water up to just to change the level it's at, so that the pipes around it read it as being level. So it would back up into your any drain really. So coming out of your shower stalls, it'd be coming out of everything.
So let's try to wrap things up on a less shitty note then.
Ha.
Pun intended. Um, Henry, I mean, this is effectively your channel. So I mean, tell us where you want to go here. What's up next? So for the closing of the show here, I think he's silenced.
Yeah, Henry was muted. Is he back? If
I
you're
can't hear
talking,
you,
your
Henry.
mic's working, bud. There, good.
Am I back?
Oh Jesus, yeah.
We're back.
I don't know. There's always shit I want to say. I find Hagbard to be incredibly fucking fascinating and interesting, and this whole conversation I found interesting. I love the conspiracy stuff too. That's something I always love.
Oh,
But
yeah, all day.
oh yeah, you know more than I do. I love it though. It's God. I would love to talk about that for like 7 hours, just nonstop. But I don't know. Should we? I don't know. Let's just wrap it up. Let's plug your channel, Mr. Hagbard.
Yeah, well, I've got the channel named after myself, which is the Hagbard Celine, and if you'd like, just come on and check out what I do, which is make little videos. I'm actually telling another story this week. I have a pretty funny one about being arrested in Kansas and the police officer making fun of the quality of my marijuana, which was embarrassing at best.
I find, I mean, just as a note for anybody who has not experienced Hagbard's content, is that Hagbard, directly to you, I will say I find you to be a very interesting mix of a sort of well-read thug, right? At least that's how it comes off. And I find you to be very interesting, just because I mean there is a brilliance and an intelligence there, and all of your content, even in its as sarcastic as it can be, it's a beautiful way of telling a story, but it's nuanced, we'll say.
Yeah, I liked, what was it? Sargon said street philosopher, which was a gentle way to say that basically I sound like a hood rat, but I'm pretty smart. I'm like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Compliment.
I'll take
And
it.
I am capacitance. I am hate capacitor on Twitter. I need 22 more followers so I can have like a real channel name, because I've only got like
22.
Yeah, 22, man. And find me there. I tend to start arguments in the comment sections of YouTube videos, and I generally post them to Twitter, so you know where I'm at. But that's what I've been up to lately. Henry, take us out.
All right, this is Skeptic Alert. I'm Henry Sweets. In case you didn't know, Hagbard Celine, Hey Capacitor. I don't need to tell you to check them out because they already said that and shit.
And his dick is this big, by the way.
It's as big, the middle finger. That's how big it is. All right,
He's
peace
rocking.
out, homies. Keep it real, you know.